Hey guys, tonight we're slipping back into a world that barely knows the word childhood. You're not stepping into a nursery filled with lullabies and nightlights. You're sliding out into a one-room hut reeking of damp straw, manure, and smoke from a fire that never quite leaves. The air is so thick with soot it tickles the back of your throat, and someone's chanting a prayer as you wail your first breath. Welcome to your medieval life. The midwife, whose hands smell like onions and old beer, ties off your umbilical cord with a scrap of wool. There are no sterile gloves. There is no boiling water, just a basin of rainwater in the corner, shared, reused, and probably warmed by a hot brick if you're lucky. You're swaddled tight, not out of love, but to straighten your limbs, tight enough to make modern pediatricians scream. Your crib? A wooden box stuffed with old rags. If you're lucky, someone hangs a sprig of rosemary or a wolf's tooth above your head to keep away the evil eye. But nothing keeps away the lice, or the rats. You're tucked beside the family pig, who's only here for warmth and will one day be breakfast. Your parents might be present, but they're already distracted by the harvest, the dying goat, or three other siblings squabbling in the mud outside. Infant mortality is so high, they don't always name you right away. No use naming a child that might not last the month, some say. And they aren't being cruel, just heartbreakingly practical. The odds aren't in your favor. Somewhere between 1 in 4 or even 1 in 3 babies dies before reaching their first birthday. Historians still argue whether poor sanitation or poor nutrition was the main culprit. But when your mother herself is living on barley gruel and prayers, it's a losing game either way. What if you're born noble, you ask? Well, your linens are finer, and you might have a nursemaid, but don't expect immunity. Diseases don't read titles. One drafty corridor and a bad winter can still snuff out a baron's baby before anyone can even commission a portrait. Sometimes you're baptized within hours of birth, not just for religious reasons, but because people are genuinely worried you might die before the priest finishes lunch. And the font water? That might be the cleanest liquid you'll touch all week. Still, there are odd comforts. Your mother hums old lullabies, half church chant, half pagan spell, and presses you against her skin, warm and strong. Your father, if he isn't off in the fields or drunk in a tavern, might carve a tiny token for you from wood, a rattle, a spoon, or even a whistle shaped like a bird. It's crude, but in a world where beauty and kindness are fleeting, it matters more than gold. By your first winter, you've survived more than most. Your blanket smells like goats. Your breath fogs the air. There's a new baby already crying in the next room, or maybe you're that baby and someone's muttering over you, offering thanks that you made it to this cold, smoky dawn. You probably won't survive this, but for now, you're still here, wide-eyed, hungry, and more resilient than any pampered child centuries later will ever believe. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is in your part of the world. I always love seeing how far our sleepy little journeys stretch. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're just a few days old now, still blinking against the flickering torchlight. You don't know it yet, but there's no such thing as a childhood where you're headed. You're not toddling through meadows or stacking wooden blocks. You're 3 years old, barefoot in the mud, hauling a sloshing pail half your size, and no one's calling it adorable. You spill it, and the chickens scatter. Your mother scolds you, but gently. She knows you're trying. Because here in your tiny village, everyone tries, or they die. The word childhood, as a phase of innocent wonder, doesn't really exist yet. Not in the way modern folks would think. You're considered a smaller, softer adult. One who can't lift as much or walk as far, but one who should certainly be doing something useful. You follow your siblings out at dawn, squinting in the mist as the cock crows and the pigs grunt awake. If your family farms, you help weed. If they spin wool, you untangle the clumps and chase off rats. If they fish, you scale the catch, guts slipping through your fingers before you've even learned your letters. Not that you're learning letters. Most kids don't. Literacy is a luxury for the wealthy, and even then, mainly for boys. For you, knowledge comes in the form of memorized prayers, the rhythm of church bells, and whispered superstitions about what not to do during an eclipse. Don't whistle after sunset. Don't step over a sleeping dog. Don't look the black cat in the eye unless you want warts. By the time you're 5, your hands are already blistered, your knees are scarred, and your sense of play is shaped entirely by your surroundings. You kick a pig's bladder filled with dried peas. You throw sticks at a tree. You mimic the way your older brother shouts at geese, and you giggle when one flaps back. Joy sneaks in, even here. But don't think the adults take you lightly. You're expected to sit quietly during Mass. You're expected to cross yourself properly, to know your saints, and to behave when company comes. Adults might ruffle your hair now and then, but they won't hesitate to cuff your ear if you spill the milk or say something foolish. Spare the rod? Not in this century. Historians still argue whether medieval parents loved their children with the same tenderness we do today. Some point to harsh punishments, quick replacements after a child's death, and the absence of sentimental writing. Others say love was simply expressed differently, through protection, food, lullabies, and desperate prayers during outbreaks. There are records of mothers walking barefoot to shrines, hoping for a saint's mercy on a sick child. There are crude dolls buried with infants. There are scratched etchings in chapel walls. Thomas was here, age 7. So maybe love didn't wear its heart on its sleeve, but it was still there, under the smoke and silence. And remember, your parents likely didn't get a childhood either. Your mother was married off before her first blood. Your father held a plow before he held you. The idea of spoiling a child is laughable here. Life itself spoils quickly enough. Still, there are moments. A feast day with berries, a neighbor's wedding where you're allowed to dance, a traveling juggler who lets you touch the puppet. These are your Disneyland. You don't know what you're missing, which is a mercy. Sometimes you hear stories of princes who ride white horses, or saints who turn rivers into wine. You don't understand them fully, but the rhythm of the tales makes you smile, especially when your grandmother tells them, her voice soft and smoky as the fire crackles. By sunset, you're curled in the corner again, the day's work done, your head resting on a sack of grain or your brother's shoulder. The stars come out, and you try to count them, but you only get to 5 before your eyes close. You dream of fields, of chickens, of saints, and of bread. Always bread. The soft kind. The kind you've never actually eaten. The morning slaps you awake with a cough. The kind that rattles deep in your chest and tastes like old smoke. You're 5 now, maybe 6, but you can't be sure because no one told you, and no one wrote it down. Your birthday isn't a celebration. It's a vague memory tied to the smell of turnips or the death of a lamb. You stretch, and the straw beneath you crackles. It's not clean straw. It hasn't been changed in weeks. You share it with your brothers, your sisters, and a few creatures that don't pay rent. Fleas, lice, maybe a mouse or two. One time a beetle crawled into your ear while you slept. It was 2 days before it came back out, still twitching. You stumble to your feet and step outside. The air hits you, damp, sharp, with the scent of dung and rotting vegetables. You don't notice. You've never smelled anything else. Baths, maybe once or twice a year. You might splash in a river if it's warm enough, or if the nuns are feeling charitable. But soap is rare, expensive, and made from lard and ashes. It stings your eyes and dries your skin. You'd rather smell like onions. Your hands are always dirty. There's dirt under your nails that's been there since winter. Your feet are calloused and cracked. Sometimes you know what, spot white worms in the outhouse. You don't ask questions. Your clothes, one tunic, maybe two, if you're lucky. It's rough wool, hand-me-down, and patched so many times it looks like a quilt. You itch constantly. You scratch so much you bleed. That's normal. Everyone bleeds. Even the priest scratches during Mass. Historians still argue whether medieval hygiene was really that bad, or if we're just comparing it to modern standards. But when the average village has no drainage, no soap, and one communal bucket for washing dishes, it's safe to say clean was more of a dream than a practice. Toothbrushes? Never heard of them. You might chew a stick or rinse with wine if you're noble. Otherwise, your teeth rot, turn black, and fall out one by one. You don't even notice until someone offers you an apple and it hurts to bite. You try not to complain. Complaining gets you chores, or worse, silence. Because in your world, silence is the grown-up's way of saying, this is just how it is. Still, there are moments of accidental relief. A summer storm that lets you rinse under the eaves. A bucket of water that's not yet murky. A goose chase that ends in a cold stream and peals of laughter. You don't know what a spa is, but you do know the joy of feeling suddenly, briefly, less filthy. You're learning the layout of your world. The pig pen, the bakehouse, the path behind the tavern where mushrooms grow. You know which trees drop fruit and which ones drop caterpillars. You know not to eat the red berries, but the yellow ones are fair game, at least most of the time. Inside your home, the smoke hangs low. There's a central fire pit, no chimney, and a hole in the roof that does almost nothing. Your lungs burn, your eyes water, and the ceiling is always stained black. You cough yourself to sleep. So does everyone else. You've heard stories about cities where people empty their chamber pots out of windows, and the streets run like rivers of filth. You're not sure if it's true, but it sounds like something that could happen. You saw a dog fall into the latrine once. No one got it out. The friar says that cleanliness is next to godliness, but the friar also smells like cheese. So, despite it all, you find small joys. A frog hopping through the yard, a puddle that reflects the sky just right, a sudden burst of bird song that makes your sister laugh. You're still a child, even if you don't have toys, even if you haven't bathed in months, even if your skin itches in 5 places right now. You look down at your fingers. They're grubby, cracked, calloused. You smile, because today the sun is out, and you can smell the bread baking. You know what's for dinner, because it was the same thing for breakfast. And yesterday, and last week, bread, always bread. Coarse, heavy, dark bread made from rye or barley or whatever grain didn't rot in the granary. It's not the fluffy kind you'd picture with butter melting on top. It's the kind that bends a knife and makes your gums bleed if you're not careful. You tear off a hunk with your teeth, jaw working hard. It's dry. It's dense. It tastes like the floor, but it's food. And if you're lucky, there's a smear of lard on it, or onion, if it's a feast day. Your stomach growls anyway. Sometimes there's pottage, a kind of medieval stew made from whatever's lying around. Cabbage, leeks, beans, oats. Maybe a fish head if someone was feeling generous. It's served in a cracked wooden bowl you share with your brother. He always eats faster than you. You learn to guard your half with your elbow. Meat? Rare. You've seen a chicken once. You waved at it. Then it disappeared and came back as soup. That was Christmas. You still remember it. Historians still argue how varied peasant diets really were. Some evidence suggests villages occasionally enjoyed cheese, eggs, or dried apples. Others say famine and scarcity were so frequent that malnutrition was just life. Either way, you're not getting seconds. You chew a crust so hard your molar wiggles. You're 7 maybe and already missing 3 teeth. No one's worried, no tooth fairy, no dentist. Just another hole in your smile. Sometimes your bread has extra crunch. You pretend not to notice. It's weevils. You crush them with your tongue. Everyone does. It's protein. Your parents grow weary by evening. The day's labor drains them, and mealtime is mostly quiet, save for the occasional prayer or reminder not to drop crumbs. Crumbs matter. Crumbs feed mice. Mice bring plague. You drink ale. Weak ale called small beer. Not because you're trying to party, but because water might kill you. Wells are shared and buckets are rinsed once a month. Maybe. You've seen green things floating in them. You don't ask. If you're noble, things are different. Your bread is white, made from sifted wheat flour. You eat from pewter plates. There might be roast goose, honey-glazed carrots, or even spiced wine. But you also have to sit perfectly still, eat with 3 fingers, and never, ever slurp. A slip of the spoon could mean a slap on the wrist. But back in your hovel, mealtime is survival. You eat fast, with your hands, sitting on the floor or a shared bench. If you drop food, you pick it up. If you're still hungry, you go outside and chew a stalk of grass and pretend it's sweet. Quirky side note. Some peasants believed bread made from rye during damp weather could make you see demons. Ergot poisoning. You don't know the word, but you've seen old Marta shake and shout at shadows after eating moldy loaves. You whisper a prayer that your bread is only stale, not cursed. Tonight your father comes home with something rare, a radish. He cuts it into 6 slices, 1 for each of you. It burns your mouth, peppery and bright. You chew slowly, trying to make the flavor last. You don't know why it makes you so happy, but it does. Food is not pleasure. Food is not art. Food is hope. Every bite says, you get to try again tomorrow. Sometimes, if there's extra dough, your mother shapes it into a little figure, just for fun. You bite the head off first, laughing, and for a second, you forget everything else. You forget the rats. You forget the cold. You forget the gnawing ache in your belly. Because for once, your bread smiled back. School, they say, a place for learning, a holy pursuit. But for you, it's a freezing stone room with no windows, no fire, and one terrifying man with a voice like thunder and a rod like a snake. You're not even sure how you ended up here. Maybe the priest noticed you muttering your prayers a little too well. Maybe your parents had enough pennies to buy you a spot. Or maybe you're noble, in which case, congratulations, you get to suffer in Latin. You shuffle in before sunrise, knees knocking, hands still cold from milking the goat. You sit on a hard bench, no desks, no ink, just a wax tablet if you're lucky, or the back of your hand if you're not. The schoolmaster begins to drone. Latin, always Latin. You don't understand it. He barely does. But it's the language of the church, and the church is the only reason you're even here. Amo, amas, amat. You say it in a trance. You don't know what it means. No one cares. Your teacher glares. You've been daydreaming again, about snow, or fish, or bread, anything other than this endless chanting. He walks over slowly, the rod tapping against his leg. Your stomach tightens. The birch rod is real. It stings. It leaves welts. Discipline is the pedagogy of choice. And you've seen a boy piss himself in fear just from a raised eyebrow. Some teachers are kind. Most aren't. One even brags about beating the devil out of slow learners. Historians still argue whether medieval schooling was truly so brutal across the board, or if we remember the worst of it because those were the stories people bothered to write down. Either way, your fingers are red and raw, and your ears ring from the last blow. School isn't universal. Most kids never go. But for those who do, it's either a path to the priesthood or a series of mental scars disguised as grammar lessons. Sometimes, the priest lets you copy letters with a quill. The ink smells like vinegar. The parchment is reused sheepskin. You write slowly, carefully, scared to blot. You're not sure what virtue means, but you know you'll be smacked if you spell it wrong. You don't study science. You don't study history. You learn the names of saints, the order of prayers, and maybe, a bit of arithmetic if your teacher's feeling radical. You chant everything. Chanting helps you remember and also keeps you quiet. Quiet children don't get hit. Sometimes you get to go outside, but not to play. You're sent to fetch wood, or fill buckets, or say your penance in the snow. You'd rather be home picking weeds. There are no picture books. There are no recess bells. There is no snack time. But sometimes, if you recite your psalm perfectly, the teacher hands you a dried fig. Once he gave you a raisin. Just one. You thought it was a miracle. The weirdest part? You still want to come back. Because somewhere in this freezing little box, amid the smacks and the sermons, you feel noticed. Like you matter. Like maybe, just maybe, you'll become something better than a turnip farmer. You trudge home after dark, numb from head to toe. Your family asks nothing. They just push a bowl toward you and say, eat. You eat. You sleep. You dream of books with golden pages. You wake up in straw. And the next morning you go again. Because even fear can become routine. You don't have toys. Not really. You have sticks. You have rocks. You have a ball made from pig-bladder, tied with string, still faintly smelling of yesterday's dinner. But today, you and the other children are playing something that could easily break a leg, or at least a few fingers. And that's part of the fun. You hurl the bladder ball across a muddy patch behind the bakery. Two boys dive after it, slipping and colliding with a sound that might be laughter, or the start of a nosebleed. Either way, no one stops. There are no rules. The ball is the goal. Winning just means holding on to it for more than 5 seconds before someone knocks you flat. The game is called mob football. Or sometimes nothing at all. It just is. There's no field, no referee, and certainly no parents on the sidelines. You've heard rumors that in bigger towns, entire villages play at once, with grown men brawling over a sheep bladder from one side of town to the other. Someone always ends up with a broken arm. Sometimes someone dies. That's why the church occasionally bans it. But not today. You trip a boy twice your size. He shouts and pushes you down. Your face hits the dirt. You're grinning. Your tunic is soaked. Your knees are bleeding. You haven't felt this alive since Harvest Day. Historians still argue how much of this roughhousing was encouraged by adults. Some say it was considered healthy for boys to grow tough, wild, and violent. Others point to laws and sermons against disorderly play. But here on the ground, with blood on your chin and sweat in your eyes, no one's quoting a bishop. Not all games are this brutal. There's knucklebones, a kind of dice game played with sheep joints. There's tag. There's something like hopscotch, scratched into dirt with coal. You once spent an entire afternoon watching a snail race. You bet a pebble on the winner. Then there are the dangerous ones. Your friend tries juggling hot coals from the forge. It's a disaster. Another kid dares you to climb the mill wall. You get halfway up before slipping, landing in a heap of cabbage leaves that break your fall, but not your pride. Once a boy lit a chicken feather and waved it through the air like a torch. He thought it was hilarious, until the thatch roof caught. The bucket chain barely saved the house. His hair never grew back quite right. And yet, every day after work, you run out to play. Because for a few stolen minutes, you're not a laborer. You're not a sinner. You're not hungry. You're a child. Sort of. You know the difference between play and punishment. You know the rules of the village, even when no one says them out loud. You know not to break the miller's fence. You know not to look the reeve in the eye. You know not to chase pigs past the apothecary's door, because she will hex you. Or so they say. Still, mischief wins. It always does. You once filled a boot with mud and left it by the fire. Another time, you climbed onto the church roof just to see what the world looked like from God's perspective. You threw crab apples at geese and laughed when they hissed. You got chased. You got caught. You got whipped. And you did it again anyway. One boy in the village made puppets from dried turnips. They were terrifying, blank faces with hollowed-out eyes and crooked stick arms, but somehow delightful. He named them after saints and made them bless the chickens. You loved every second. And don't even get started on fart contests. In a world full of plagues, hunger, and rules written in a language you can't read, play is your rebellion. It's your reminder that even if you're small, dirty, and barefoot, the world still has space for laughter. Even if that laughter leaves you with a black eye. Your head itches again. Not the usual little scratch either. This one's a full-on scalp invasion. You dig your nails into your hairline and pull out a squirming louse. You flick it. It lands in your porridge. You eat around it. It's not even the worst part of your morning. You've had lice for years. Everyone has. They live in your hair, your tunic, your blanket. There are rumors that some children keep a pet chicken just to peck the lice off their bodies. You don't have a chicken. You have your fingers. And an older sister with surprisingly sharp nails. Your hair's thinning now. Just a little. Bald patches where you've scratched too hard, or where the lice have set up permanent residence. Your friend Thomas has a boil on his neck the size of a plum. Another boy has ringworm that looks like the map of France. A girl you know hasn't stopped coughing in a month, and her mother just whispers prayers now and ties herbs to her bedposts. You're not sick. Not yet. But you don't feel great either. Toothaches are the worst. There's one in the back of your mouth that throbs every time you chew. You tried yanking it out once with a bit of string and a hammer. It didn't work. Now it just bleeds. Sometimes you put cold mud on it and pretend it helps. Historians still argue whether medieval people really had worse teeth than modern folks. Some say the low-sugar diet kept decay minimal. Others point out that the lack of hygiene, dental care, and the occasional grindstone accident probably made tooth loss common by age 20. You don't care about the debate. You just want to eat without crying. There's a boy in the next village who swears he saw a toothworm. He says it came out of his molar during Lent, wiggled like a maggot, and vanished. The old women say that's how toothaches happen, tiny devils burrowing into your skull. You kind of believe them. You once visited a healer for a rash. She rubbed goose fat on your skin and chanted something in Latin. Then she burned a feather and waved it over your head. The rash got worse. You didn't go back. There's always a smell in the village. Something like sweat, mold, smoke, and wet wool. You're used to it. But every now and then, you catch a whiff of rosemary or beeswax or clean laundry, and it's like a dream. A rich man passed by once wearing something that smelled like lemons. You followed him for half a mile, just breathing. There are times when your body just refuses to cooperate. You faint in the field. You vomit for a whole day. Your eyes go weird and everything tilts. No one knows why. They just say it's the humors, or sin, or your mother's fault. Someone rubs garlic on your feet and lights a candle for St. Apollonia. You get better, or you don't, but you're not allowed to stop moving. There are chores to do, fires to tend, water to carry. If you rest too long, someone else gets your bread. So, you push through. Always. Even when your joints ache and your ears ring. Sometimes your body rebels in stranger ways. You hiccup for an entire night. You can't stop blinking. You feel like your skin isn't quite yours anymore. You don't have words for it. You just hope it passes. But now and then something odd happens. A warm bath. Someone boils herbs and pours them into a barrel. You climb in. It burns. Then it soothes. You close your eyes and pretend you're a prince. Just for a minute. Then the lice come back. And so does the toothache. And someone yells your name to come clean the coop. You sigh. And you scratch. You pull your tunic over your head, and it scratches like always. It's made of wool, coarse, unlined, and worn thin, in places that used to keep you warm. There's a patch on the left shoulder where your brother tore it climbing the mill fence, and another on the back, stitched by your mother with thread dyed in beet juice. It turned an odd shade of pink. You tell people it's a dragon bite. You wear the same thing every day. Everyone does. Clothes are too expensive to treat lightly. Most children own one outfit. Two, if they're very lucky, or happen to be related to a weaver. There's no such thing as a wardrobe. Your spare clothing might be hanging from a nail, stiff with last winter's mud. Your undergarments, if you have them, are made from linen, but they're never quite clean. Laundry day happens once a month, maybe. You boil what you can, beat it on a rock, rinse it in cold river water, and hang it on bushes to dry. Then you put it back on, wet or not. Your shoes, if you even have any, are scraps of leather tied with string. They're warped by rain and full of holes. If you're barefoot, you walk carefully. You know every sharp stone in the path by feel now. It's winter. Your sleeves are too short. You wrap rags around your ankles and pretend they're boots. They soak through by midday. Still, you're warmer than your friend Agnes, whose tunic is more holes than cloth. She smiles anyway. Historians still argue whether medieval people really wore dull clothes all the time, or whether peasants actually had a splash of color. There's evidence that many families dyed their garments with natural plants, onion skins, nettles, even crushed berries. But rich, vibrant dyes were costly. If your tunic is greenish or brownish, you're doing fine. Hats are rare, hoods more common. You might wear a coif, a simple cloth tied under the chin, or wrap your head in a scarf if the wind bites hard enough. You've seen grown women wear wimples that cover everything but their eyes. You think they look like walking laundry. And oh, the lice. They don't care what you wear. They crawl freely between your collar and neck. You once found one in your ear, another time in your food. No one reacted. Lice are simply part of the outfit. Noble children dress differently. Theirs is not comfort. It's control. Stiff collars, too tight hose, embroidered everything. They wear tiny versions of adult clothing, taught to carry themselves with dignity before they can carry firewood. A noble girl might be sewn into her dress for days at a time. A noble boy learns to wear a dagger before he learns to read. You envy them, sometimes, until you see them trip on their sleeves. Sometimes someone dies, and you inherit their clothes. No ceremony, no adjustment. If the dead man was taller, you roll the hem. If he was fatter, you stuff straw inside. A tunic is a tunic. Your cloak, if you have one, smells like goats. That's because it was a goat not long ago. The leather is stiff and cracks when it's cold, but it keeps the wind off your back. You're grateful for it, even if it makes you look like a moving haystack. The funniest part? You forget how itchy everything is after a while. Your skin adjusts. Your shoulders toughen. Your arms scab over and heal again. You stop noticing the rash where the seam rubs your ribs, until you see a traveler pass through town, wearing blue, real blue, deep and rich, like the sky after a storm. Everyone stares. You do too. That kind of color costs a fortune. Woad or indigo, ground and soaked and fermented and boiled. You don't want his cloak. You just want to touch it. He's gone the next day. You return to your goat-stiff cloak and your beet-patched tunic. You scratch the back of your neck and sigh. At least you're dressed. Sort of. You don't get an allowance. You don't get recess. You get chores, and you get them early. By the time you're 6 or 7, you're expected to carry your own weight, or at least someone else's firewood. There's no asking if you're ready, no gentle training period. You watch your parents. You copy what they do. And if you're too slow, someone else does it for you, and eats your share of the bread. Your first job? Fetching water. Easy, right? Except the bucket is heavy, the well is half a mile away, and the path is slippery with muck and chicken droppings. You spill a lot at first. You get scolded. Then you spill less. Then none. You've learned. Your second job might be gathering firewood or chasing geese out of the cabbage patch. If your family has animals, you feed them. If they have crops, you weed them. If someone dies in the village, you help carry the body. Work is life. There's no distinction. You wake up, you do what must be done, and then you go to sleep again. You've never heard the word weekend, and yet you survive. Not always well, but enough. Historians still debate how many hours peasants actually worked. Some argue that medieval people, especially in winter, had more downtime than modern folks assume. Others point to grueling seasonal labor, harvests, planting, shearing, when people worked sunup to sundown just to scrape by. You wouldn't know how many hours you work. You just know the sun's position and the ache in your arms. Sometimes you get lucky. Someone sends you to town with eggs or wool. It's exciting. There are smells, tanneries, fish stalls, rotting fruit, and noises. You pass jugglers, beggars, friars, and maybe even a knight if you're lucky. Once, you saw a woman with a monkey on her shoulder. You still think about that monkey. If you're noble, your work looks different. You learn to read. You learn Latin. You practice archery or dancing. But make no mistake, it's still work. You rise early. You bow constantly. You're corrected every time you chew the wrong way. You are being molded into a marriage alliance or a little war machine. The hardest part of peasant work isn't the effort. It's the repetition, the endlessness of it. No matter how many weeds you pull, more come. No matter how many stones you clear from the path, the rain brings more, and no one thanks you for it. But now and then, there's a small reward. A pat on the shoulder, a crust of bread dipped in drippings, a night where your father says nothing except, "Well done." You sleep better those nights. And then there are the accidents. Your friend drops a pot and burns her leg. No ointment, just a bandage and a prayer. A boy you know falls from a ladder. He limps forever after. Your own fingers are calloused, your nails blackened, your back sore by age 10. Work doesn't wait for you to grow strong. It makes you strong, or breaks you trying. One day, your mother hands you a spindle. She shows you how to twist the wool. You fumble. It tangles. She sighs. You try again. The thread slips through your fingers, thin and twitchy. You keep going. That night she weaves it into a sock for your baby brother, and suddenly it matters. You've contributed. You may not know your exact age. You may not know how to write your name, but you know how to dig, carry, spin, and scrub. You know how to endure. And in your world, that's as close to success as most people ever get. The church bells ring before the sky turns pink. You groan, not because you're tired, you always are, but because you know what day it is. Sunday, which means no weeding, no wood gathering, no pig chasing, but not because you get to rest. No. Today you must sit still, for hours, in the cold. You tug your cloak over your head and shuffle toward the village chapel with the rest of your family. The ground is wet. Your feet are already soaked, and your stomach growls because there's no eating before Mass. Not unless you want to anger God and your mother in the same breath. You file in, head down. The air smells like smoke, damp wool, and incense. You can see your breath. Somewhere behind you, a baby cries. Someone coughs wetly into a sleeve. You keep your eyes on the floor. The priest begins the service in Latin. You don't understand a word, but you've memorized when to kneel, when to mutter, and when to look vaguely penitent. It's not about understanding, it's about obedience, about ritual, about staying awake while your knees go numb on a stone floor. You're supposed to feel holy. Instead, you feel itchy. Your tunic sticks to your back with sweat. You try not to fidget. You think about bread. Historians still argue how deeply faith shaped the average peasant's life. Some say religion was woven into every breath. Others claim it was more performative, a mix of tradition, fear, and obligation. For you, it's both. You don't fully understand what a sin is, but you've been told that lying, stealing, and spitting near the altar might get you sent to hell. So you behave, just in case. And then there's nighttime. It's not the dark that scares you. It's what might be in it. Demons, ghosts, witches. The stories say they walk the forests, whispering in animal voices, peering through windows. You've heard that if you sleep with your feet uncovered, the devil might lick them. You believe this more than you'd like to admit. Before bed, your mother murmurs a prayer and makes the sign of the cross over your brow. You do the same to your younger brother, even if he's already asleep. You don't want the night spirits taking him. There's no light, of course, just the fire, if it hasn't burned out. You lie close to it, wrapped in a stiff blanket, and listen. Owls. Wind. A distant howl. Was that a wolf? Or something worse? You close your eyes and think of saints. Saint George, with his dragon. Saint Nicholas, who saved children from being chopped into pickles. Saints can protect you. Maybe. Unless they're busy with someone holier. Sometimes you dream of hell, a place of fire and screaming, filled with sinners whose crimes sound uncomfortably familiar, sassing a priest, stealing a plum, working on a holy day. The priest once said that even bad thoughts could damn you. You try very hard not to think. Your dreams turn strange. You see cows with glowing eyes, a man with no hands ringing a bell, a staircase that leads into the sky. You wake sweating, heart racing, but it's just the straw poking your ribs again. You roll over. The fire has gone out. The chapel is a memory. The demons are back in their holes, for now. And in the morning, the bells will ring again. You wake with something tickling your cheek. You slap at it thinking it's a flea, but it's a rat. Not a big one. Just curious. It scampers away across the floorboards, tail whisking against your ankle. You sigh. Just another morning. You share your sleeping space with more than just siblings. There are mice under the floor, spiders in the corners, fleas in your clothes, and lice absolutely everywhere. But the rats, oh, the rats are bold. They squeak in the night, chew through bread bags, and once tried to eat your brother's toe while he slept. He still has the scar. The rat? It probably lived a long and happy life. Your bed isn't really a bed. It's a pile of straw, maybe with a cloth over it. Maybe not. If you're lucky, there's a wall between you and the wind. If you're really lucky, the pig doesn't snore tonight. Yes, the pig. She sleeps inside during the winter to help keep the house warm. You've named her Joan. Some nights, Joan is the warmest thing in the house. Everyone sleeps in one room. Mother, father, sisters, brothers, maybe a grandparent or two, and whatever animals need shelter. Privacy is a fantasy. You change clothes under a blanket or not at all. You learn to ignore snoring, farting, coughing, and the occasional whimper from someone trapped in a bad dream. There's no mattress, no pillow, just your arm. If you're noble, maybe you get a straw-stuffed sack, with bugs. Historians still argue whether medieval sleeping conditions were always this bad, or whether we're exaggerating based on the poorest examples. But most agree that vermin were common companions, and shared beds were the norm. There's even a theory that sleeping in shifts, first sleep and second sleep, was standard, interrupted by prayers, snacks, or, well, scratching. Your nighttime routine? Not much of one. You might rub your feet with fat if they're cracked. You might wrap them in rags. If you're ill, someone might hang a charm above your head or put herbs under your pillow. You once slept with garlic around your neck, for the cough, or maybe vampires. No one really clarified. The floor is dirt mostly, swept now and then, packed tight. If it rains, it gets soft and squelchy. If it's cold, it cracks. You once drew faces in it with a stick while waiting for your turn at the chamber pot. Ah yes, the chamber pot, or the corner bucket, or, if you're brave and desperate, the path behind the house. Indoor plumbing is a fantasy. The bucket gets emptied in the morning. Or not. Sometimes it freezes. You've seen what happens when it overflows. You don't talk about it. The smell? Always there. But you don't notice unless a stranger visits. Once, a traveling merchant wrinkled his nose and whispered, "How can they live like this?" You didn't understand. This is life. Sometimes at night the fire dies early. The cold creeps in. You huddle tighter with your siblings. One snores. One kicks. One talks in their sleep about dancing turnips. You shiver. You dream of sunshine. Despite it all, there's comfort here. A shared warmth. A closeness. A sense that, no matter how itchy or smelly or cramped, this space is yours. Yours and your family's. And maybe Joan's. In the morning you'll stretch, groan, and blink through the smoke from the rekindled fire. You'll feel the rat's footprints in the dust and smile a little. At least he didn't bite you. Not this time. You're burning, or freezing, or sweating through your tunic while shivering so hard your teeth rattle. Either way, something's wrong. Again. Another fever. Another sickness. Another mystery the grown-ups can't name but always seem to fear. You're bundled in blankets that smell like goats and onions. Your mother hovers nearby, pressing a damp cloth to your head. She mutters a prayer to Saint Blaise. He's the one for throats, you think? Or lungs. It's hard to remember which saint does what, when your ears are ringing and the ceiling looks like it's breathing. There's no doctor. Not in your village. Maybe in the next town, but you'd have to survive the cart ride to get there. And even if you did, what could they do? Leeches? Bleeding? You've seen someone get bled before. They used a rusty blade in a bowl that hadn't been cleaned since Candlemas. The boy didn't get better. He just got paler. This time, your mother's trying garlic on your feet. Last time, it was mashed mustard seed and a prayer written on parchment and pinned to your sleeve. You don't know if it helps. You don't care. You just want to stop shaking. Sometimes a friar comes with a relic, a chipped bone in a box, or a bit of cloth that supposedly touched a saint. He places it on your forehead and mutters in Latin. It's cold. Then it's warm. Then nothing. Historians still debate whether these cures were ever effective or purely placebo. Some think herbs helped. Others think it was hope doing the heavy lifting. But when your options are sweat or die, you don't ask for data. You just drink the tea and pray. The tea is bitter. Always. Wormwood, mugwort, chamomile if you're lucky. Sometimes it's more bark than leaf. You sip it anyway. Then gag. Then sip again. It stays down. That's a good sign. If your fever breaks, you wake in a puddle of sweat, weak as a baby bird. If it doesn't, well, you're not the first child to vanish from the straw pallet without a sound. Your parents won't talk about it. They'll wrap you in linen, dig a shallow grave near the chapel, and move on. What else can they do? You've seen it happen. A sibling, a neighbor. One day coughing, the next day silent. A candle burns. A priest murmurs. And life continues. But you're not gone yet. Your fingers are twitching. Your lips are dry. Your breath rattles. But it's still there. And then, a miracle. Bread. Not the usual crust, but soft, warm, honey-drizzled. A gift from the priest. Or maybe the baker's wife took pity on your mother. Either way, it tastes like sunlight. You nibble it slowly. It stays down, too. You're healing. You're not sure how the tea, the relic, the garlic socks, or maybe you just outlasted the thing. Children sometimes do. You get up 2 days later, legs shaking, head light. You look around. Everything's the same, but you're not. You survived. Again. Outside, a boy is trying to make a flute from a bone. Someone's arguing about chickens. The wind smells like spring, or at least like mud that's trying to remember what flowers are. You shuffle outside, blanket still draped over your shoulders. Your sister smiles at you like you've returned from the dead. And maybe you have. It's winter again. Not the cozy kind with snowflakes and mulled cider. This is the kind that makes the inside of your nose freeze, the kind where your breath hangs in the air like a ghost refusing to leave. You wake up, and your blanket is stiff. Your hair crackles with frost. The water in the bucket beside your bed is ice. You touch it. It bites. You don't want to move, but you must. There's wood to fetch, fire to rekindle, animals to feed. Always the animals. They're huddled inside now. Goat, pig, maybe a chicken or two. Their bodies help warm the house. So does yours. You sleep side by side like a strange family portrait. Breakfast? If you're lucky, hot pottage. If you're not, cold bread that cracks when you bite it. No butter, no honey. You once had a sliver of dried apple, and you still talk about it like it was treasure. The wind howls through cracks in the walls. You plug them with straw, rags, whatever you can find. Still, the cold creeps in. It climbs your legs and wraps around your ribs. At night you shiver so hard your teeth ache. You sleep pressed against your brother, fighting over who gets the middle spot, the warmest place. Historians still argue how devastating medieval winters really were. Some evidence shows that the Little Ice Age didn't fully take hold until later centuries, but that doesn't mean your winters are mild. You've seen frozen cattle, frostbitten fingers, and entire mornings lost to just trying to start a fire. When food runs low, the village gets quiet. Bellies groan, eyes sink. Your mother counts the turnips again and sighs. You try not to think about hunger. You chew slowly, make each bite last. You fill your mouth with snow, just to pretend you're full. There's no insulation, no central heat. The fire is your only defense, and sometimes the wood runs out, then it's twigs, then straw, then old furniture. You burned your father's stool once. He didn't even yell. And when there's nothing left to burn, you huddle, you pray, and you wait. Clothes become layered, 2 tunics, a wool cloak, rags around your feet. Still not enough. Your fingers turn purple, your lips split, your nose runs constantly. You wipe it on your sleeve. It freezes there. You do it again. Sometimes someone gets sick. A fever, a cough, a quiet little death wrapped in a blanket. The chapel bell rings. The digging starts. Frozen ground makes graves harder to dig, but not impossible. But winter isn't all doom. There are moments when the snow falls softly and turns the village silver, when you catch flakes on your tongue and pretend they taste like sugar, when a neighbor makes a sled out of a barrel lid and everyone takes turns sliding down the hill behind the mill. You laugh, you fall, you get back up. Feast days offer brief warmth, Candlemas, Epiphany. The fire burns longer. There might be stew, maybe even music. You huddle around it with everyone else, faces red, eyes shining. For one night, the cold stays outside, and then the fire fades. The embers die. You crawl back under the stiff blanket. You press your fingers between your knees. You whisper a prayer to St. Bridget, because someone once said she guards against winter chills. You sleep. You dream of spring. You dream of green. But when you wake, it's still white. You're lying in bed, staring at the beams overhead, listening to the wind whistle through the rafters. And then softly comes a sound you love, a story. Your grandmother's voice, low and gravelly, tells you about the cow that knelt at midnight on Christmas Eve. She swears she saw it once herself. The cow bowed its head, eyes gleaming with something holy. You don't believe her. You do believe her. You believe everything in the moment, because stories are more than tales. They're warmth in the cold, light in the dark. There are saints, of course. Saint Margaret, who burst from a dragon's belly. Saint Denis, who carried his head for miles. Saints who wept blood, cured boils, or made bread appear during famine. These are bedtime stories with teeth. They scare you and comfort you at the same time. Then there are the older stories, the ones your grandmother tells when no priest is around. Tales of will-o'-the-wisps, green men in the forest, witches who ride goats backwards and sneak into your dreams. She swears there's a spirit in the well, and that the hawthorn tree near the chapel should never be touched. You once saw her leave bread there. You didn't ask. Historians still debate how long pagan beliefs lingered among medieval peasants. Some claim they were wiped away by strict doctrine. Others argue they simply hid under the surface, woven into prayers, rituals, and quiet little offerings beneath full moons. You know what you've seen: crosses hung beside charms, holy water next to salt lines on the windowsill, faith and fear living together. You remember one night when the moon was full, and your older sister swore she saw a woman dancing in the field. No one believed her, except you. You still look out at that field sometimes, just in case. On St. John's Eve, the village lights bonfires. Everyone gathers, dancing, laughing, tossing dried herbs into the flames to ward off sickness and sorrow. It's the one night even grown-ups seem young. You jump over the embers with bare feet and feel like magic might actually be real. Your friend's uncle carves little talismans out of wood. Tiny faces, symbols, strange animals. People wear them under their tunics or hang them over cradles. He says they bring luck. You believe that too. Even the church seems to allow some of it. The line between miracle and magic is fuzzy. A child cured by a saint's relic isn't so different from one saved by an herb poultice and a whispered spell. You learn not to ask too many questions. Just say thank you. Feast days are filled with stories. Parades of costumed figures, mock battles between good and evil, mummers performing tales of dragons and kings. Once, you played a dead knight who came back to life. You lay in the dirt for nearly an hour just to get it right. The best stories aren't written down. They're passed from lips to ears, from firelight to straw bed, and each teller adds a little something extra, a twist, a shiver, a laugh. You grow up believing in saints, spirits, demons, and dreams. You carry charms in your pocket. You make wishes on the first star. You whisper secrets to the moon. Because in your world, stories are armor. And sometimes, they're the only thing between you and the dark. You hear the scream before you smell the smoke. Then comes the chaos. Shouts, thudding feet, the squeal of a frightened pig. Someone's house is on fire. Again, you run outside, heart hammering. Flames lick the thatched roof, orange and wild against the night sky. The neighbors are already forming a line, passing buckets from the well, hands numb, arms shaking. You grab one, too small to be helpful, but too scared not to try. Water splashes your feet. Steam hisses as it hits the blaze. The fire wins. The roof collapses with a sickening crack. Sparks leap into the sky like fleeing spirits. The woman next to you wails. Her home is gone. Nothing to do now but pray the wind doesn't carry the flames to yours. You don't sleep that night, no one does. Fire is one of the great terrors of your world. A single spark, a tipped candle, a clumsy hand near the hearth, and suddenly everything you own is ash. There are no fire departments, just neighbors with buckets and hope. And it's not just fire. Wells collapse. Carts overturn. Trees fall. Knives slip. You live in a world where danger isn't rare. It's routine. You've seen a girl lose 2 fingers to a loom, a boy kicked in the chest by a mule, a man trampled during harvest. No warning. No mercy. Historians still argue whether medieval villages were more dangerous than cities. Some claim the tight-knit communities and slower pace of life offered safety. Others point to the lack of medicine, sanitation, and formal rescue systems. From where you stand, with soot on your face and a blister forming on your palm, it doesn't matter much. There are no bandages, only rags. No ointment, just honey or lard. No doctor, unless you count the woman who talks to her plants, and once pulled a tooth with pliers heated in the fire. You do count her, because when your friend fell from a tree and split his chin, she was the only one who came. You're not afraid of play, but you've learned to be cautious. You test every branch before you climb. You keep away from the mill wheel. You never chase a chicken into the smithy again. Once was enough. The worst part? There's no rescue coming. No ambulance, no siren, no safe room to run to. You are your own emergency response team. Your family is your hospital. And if someone dies, the village is your mourning band. One day, your brother falls into the well. It's shallow, thank the saints, and he lands in muck. But for a few seconds, the world tilts. The silence afterward is heavier than the splash. You help haul him out. You laugh. Later, you cry. There are moments when you feel invincible, scaling a barn wall, leading over a creek, balancing on the edge of the wash basin. And then, a misstep, a snapped rope, a slip on frozen mud. Suddenly you're reminded, the world has no padding, just stone, fire, blade, bone. Even sleep can betray you. You roll too close to the hearth. The embers burn your sleeve. You wake with a gasp and a scar you'll carry forever. You never sleep that close again, but still you play, you run, you risk, because there's no other way to live, and because sometimes, against all odds, you land on your feet. You hear your name, but it doesn't sound right. It's your name, yes, but it's also the name of your older brother who died last year, and the one before that who died the year before. It's confusing, but no one else seems to mind. Your mother calls you Thomas, and sometimes she looks like she's trying to remember which Thomas you are. You're used to it. You've got 6 siblings, maybe 7, if the baby makes it through the winter. But numbers blur. You sleep in piles. You eat in turns. You fight over firewood, bread crusts, and who gets the spoon with the handle still attached. Your father works from sunup to sundown and rarely speaks unless it's to give instructions. He's not unkind, just tired. Your mother sings to the baby, tells stories to the little ones, and spends her afternoons elbow deep in dough or dishwater. There's always a baby. There's always something boiling. You sometimes wonder if they love you. Not in the way saints love sinners or God loves the world, just you. But in this world, love isn't soft. It's survival. Love is a coat handed down, a hunk of bread slipped into your hand without a word, a slap when you get too close to the fire, a whispered prayer when you cough in your sleep. Historians still argue whether medieval parents bonded deeply with their children. Infant mortality was so high, some scholars claim parents distanced themselves emotionally. Others say the opposite, that every child lost was a scar carried for life. You've seen your mother cry over a broken wooden toy that used to belong to one of the other Thomases. So, you believe the love was real. You try not to think about death, but it's always there. In the corner. In the coughing. In the way people stop using someone's name. You once asked your grandmother how many children she had. She said 5, but only 2 were alive. You don't get birthdays. You don't get portraits. The only record of your existence might be a name in a parish book, scribbled by a priest with ink that's already fading. You've learned to make yourself known in other ways. You whistle louder. You climb higher. You try to be the one who makes the others laugh. Once, you fell face first in the pig trough just to get your sister to stop crying. It worked. You wore mud in your ears for a week. You help your mother when she's sick. You carry your baby brother even when he smells like everything wrong with the world. You teach the toddlers to count with pebbles. No one says thank you. They just give you the better piece of bread that night. That's enough. You've met noble children once or twice. They don't seem to know how to climb trees or laugh without checking who's watching. They wear clean clothes and use handkerchiefs and have names that sound like Latin spells. You envy them, but you also pity them. They look lonely. You don't feel lonely, even when you're not sure your name is your own, even when you go a whole day without anyone touching you, even when your mother mistakes you for someone who's gone, because you're still here, breathing, laughing, scratching, working, alive, and that, in this life, is enough to matter. You're 12 and someone just called you a man. You nearly laugh, your voice still cracks, your hands still fumble with ropes, and you're still scared of the dark barn loft. But they meant it, because in your world, 12 is old enough for marriage, old enough for responsibility, old enough to be punished like an adult. Your friend Agnes is getting married next week. She's 13. The man she's marrying has a beard longer than your arm and 3 missing fingers from a mill accident. She's quiet about it. Not sad, not excited, just resigned. Like someone told her the weather and she nodded. You help sweep the chapel before the ceremony. The priest says it's a blessing. You're not sure for who. Children aren't treated like children here. You've been hauling wood, tending animals, and spinning wool for years. Now you add more to the list. Keeping accounts, repairing tools, carrying messages to the next village. You work like an adult. You hurt like one too. You once got caught stealing a loaf of bread, not out of greed but hunger. The baker cuffed you so hard your ear rang for a week. You were lucky. The law allows for branding, stocks, even mutilation. There's no juvenile court. No, he's just a child. If you can hold a knife, you're old enough to answer for it. Historians still debate how medieval society viewed the boundary between childhood and adulthood. Some records suggest a gradual transition. Others argue that once you reached a certain size, you were treated no differently than your parents. You know one thing for sure, the line is blurry, and no one's marking it with cake or candles. You start to notice your body changing, hair in odd places, a voice that deepens when you least expect it. Girls notice too. They whisper and giggle. You pretend not to care. You definitely care. You don't get lessons on love or puberty. You get warnings from elders, from the church, from stories. Don't look too long. Don't touch. Don't sin. Everything is either sacred or shameful, and no one explains which is which until it's too late. You carry more weight now, physically and figuratively. When your father's back goes out, you lead the plowing. When your mother is sick, you fetch herbs from the edge of the forest, even though the apothecary says it's haunted. You start to dream of the future, a cottage of your own, a pig, a wife who laughs, a field of beans that grows like the ones in Saint stories. You know these dreams are fragile, but you keep them anyway, like seeds in a cold pocket. Sometimes you envy younger kids, the ones still playing with sticks, still small enough to cry without being mocked. You miss being picked up. You miss being sung to. You miss not knowing what taxes are. And sometimes you feel pride. You fixed a broken latch. You caught a runaway goat. You taught your little sister how to spin thread. No one applauded, but someone passed you the first bowl of soup that night. That's how you know you're growing up, not through parties or gifts, but through quiet nods, through fewer instructions, through longer silences. You're not quite an adult, but you're definitely not a child anymore. You see them in the distance, those noble children. Bright cloaks, polished boots, faces clean as fresh parchment. They pass through your village in a litter or on ponies, surrounded by attendants and the clatter of too many buckles. You watch them with a mix of curiosity, awe, and something sharp that you don't have a name for yet. They're your age, maybe younger, but their lives, completely different. While you're herding geese and dodging mule kicks, they're learning to bow properly, to speak in French, and to eat without slurping. While you practice aiming rocks at a stump, they're training with wooden swords under the eye of a retired knight who's missing most of his teeth, but still commands respect. If they're boys, they're being raised to become squires, then knights, or clerics, or lawyers. Their lessons include Latin, mathematics, and the art of letter writing. their fingers ink-stained, but not from farm ledgers, from poetry and psalms. If they're girls, they're learning to dance, to embroider, to read a bit if they're lucky, and to run a household, even one they don't live in yet. At 10 or 12, they might be promised to someone twice their age, with twice their land. A marriage as much a contract as a conversation. You once saw a noble boy being scolded for using the wrong fork. You don't even own a fork. Historians still discuss whether noble children truly lived easier lives or simply different ones. While they didn't suffer the same kind of physical hunger, they were burdened with expectation, performance, and the ever-present danger of falling out of favor. Their comfort came at a price. So did yours. Their rooms are separate, their meals served hot. They sleep on real beds, mattresses filled with feathers, not straw, and they have private tutors instead of grumpy priests with birch rods. But they also live with strict rules. What to say, where to sit, who to marry, who to never ever make eye contact with. They have everything, except freedom. You once spoke to a page who was your age. He confided in you that he missed his village, missed throwing stones at crows and falling asleep next to his cousin under a leaky roof. He missed the simplicity, the laughter, the dirt. He asked you what it was like to run barefoot through the woods. You told him it hurt. He smiled anyway. Still, you envy their clothes, their warm hands, their soft food. You don't say it aloud, but you sometimes imagine waking up in a noble's bed with your own fire and a bowl of honeyed oats just waiting. Then you laugh. That's not your story. Back in your world, you're carrying a bucket of slop to the pigs. In theirs, they're reading Virgil, or praying in Latin, or getting fitted for a doublet made from cloth worth more than your family's entire cottage. But sometimes, you wonder if they look at you the same way. When they pass through the village, when they see you laughing with mud on your face, when they hear the freedom in your voice as you shout across the hills, maybe they wonder what it feels like to be unobserved, to be unpolished, to be you. You're walking home with a splinter in your foot, your hands sore from spinning flax, and a scab forming on your chin from tripping over a chicken earlier. And yet, you're smiling, because today, your sister gave you a carved whistle made from an old bit of wood. It makes the most ridiculous sound you've ever heard, like a goat sneezing through a pipe. And you adore it. You blow it 5 times before your mother tells you to knock it off, or she'll toss it in the fire. You tuck it safely into your tunic and keep grinning. Joy doesn't visit often in your world, but when it does, it arrives in small, precious pieces. A wooden toy, a slice of pear, a snowflake that lands perfectly on your nose. You don't expect happiness. You catch it like a bird and hold it as gently as you can. Sometimes it comes in feast days. The whole village buzzes with anticipation for days, maybe weeks. Food is shared. A pig is slaughtered. Someone plays a lute badly, and everyone dances anyway. You spin until you fall over, laughing in the dirt. You can't feel your toes, but you can feel your heart. Other times, it's a moment of quiet, the sky turning gold behind the trees, or the feeling of your little brother falling asleep on your shoulder during Mass, trusting you completely, even as his nose runs down your sleeve. Historians often ask, how did medieval children endure it all? The hunger, the cold, the work, the fear, the loss. Maybe the answer is here, in these odd, flickering bursts of gladness that appear like candlelight in a dark room. Joy not as a condition, but as rebellion, a refusal to be entirely consumed. You build a tiny castle from stones by the stream. You crown a beetle and make it a knight. You write your name in the mud and pretend it's a royal decree. These games are silly, sacred, necessary. One of your friends discovers how to whistle using only her hands. You all gather around trying to copy the sound. Someone finally gets it right, and everyone shrieks as if the sky cracked open. Another day, you and your siblings trap a mouse, name it Lord Sniffles, and build it a palace out of twigs and moss. It escapes, of course. You declare a national day of mourning and bury a leaf in its honor. Laughter isn't rare because people are cold-hearted. It's rare because it takes effort to lift your head in a world that presses down so hard. So when someone tells a joke or pulls a face or makes the fart sound with their armpit, you treasure it. You carry that warmth in your chest longer than a meal. There's a traveling juggler who visits once a year. He's missing 2 fingers and smells like onions, but he can balance a chicken feather on his nose while playing the lute with his elbow. You watch with your mouth open the entire time. You dream about juggling for weeks. Once your grandmother tells a story so funny she laughs so hard she snorts. She tries to pretend it didn't happen. You remind her every day for a month. She threatens to turn your porridge into ashes. You both laugh anyway. You're poor, you're dirty, you're tired, but sometimes you're joyful, not despite your world, because of it. You wake up coughing as usual. The smoke from the fire is thin this morning, just a whisper above the coals. You roll over and see your sister's face, smeared with sleep and straw, her arm flung across your chest. She snores like a drowning duck. You smile. Today is just another day. But somehow you feel lighter. You pull on your tunic, still damp from last night's snow, and step outside. The frost crunches under your bare feet. The air is cold and sharp, but the sky is clear, and that means maybe, just maybe, the sun will warm things up before your fingers freeze off. Your mother is already up, humming. The chickens are flapping around like they know something good is coming. A neighbor calls out that the mill's wheel is finally unfrozen. The whole village seems a little less gray. You find a bit of time between chores. You and your friends chase each other through the orchard, slipping on ice, yelping, laughing. One of you falls flat and claims to be dead. The others bury him in leaves and give a solemn speech. He rises from the grave 2 minutes later and shouts that he's come back for revenge. You all scatter like startled cats. The geese chase you. Again. You swear they remember your face. You get a sliver pulling wood from the pile. You show it off proudly. A badge of honor. Your mother rolls her eyes and pulls it out with her teeth. You scream, dramatically, then bow as if you've survived a battlefield. At dinner, your father tells a joke. It's not a good joke, but it's a try, and you all laugh like it's the cleverest thing ever said. Your little brother spills the pottage and tries to hide under the bench. Your grandmother blames the devil. Your mother blames the spoon. You go to bed with your feet still cold but your stomach full. You close your eyes and think about the chicken you hugged this morning, the whistle you carved from willow, the way the wind made the trees hum like a lullaby. And somewhere, under all the dirt and bruises and hunger, you realize you're still here. You've survived sickness, beatings, fire, hunger, boredom, fear, loss. You've laughed, you've built, you've played, you've loved. You, a grubby little medieval child with a crooked tooth, and a dream of having 2 shoes at once, have lived more than many twice your age. Historians still puzzle over what kept children like you going. Was it faith, community, resilience? Maybe all of it. Maybe none. Maybe just the stubbornness of a child who refuses to let the world crush their spark. You're not a saint. You're not a prince. You're not even special. But you are you. And that's more than enough. You fall asleep listening to your sister snore, and the wind whisper against the walls. And as the fire dims to ash, you smile into the dark. The fire's low now, little more than an ember's glow. The sounds of the village have quieted, the distant clatter of hooves gone, the soft hum of voices faded into the still hush of night. You're wrapped in a blanket that's scratchy and thin, but it holds just enough warmth to keep the cold from your bones. You shift in the straw, feel it crunch beneath you, and let your breathing slow. The ache in your arms from the day's work dulls, the sting of a scraped knee forgotten. There's just the steady rhythm of your breath, and the distant creak of old beams overhead. Outside, the stars burn sharp in the sky, clean, cold, and ancient. You imagine them as candles lit by saints, watching over you, not with grandeur, but with quiet familiarity. You are one of many, a flicker in time. But tonight, you mattered. You curled tighter into yourself, chasing the last bit of warmth. Maybe tomorrow will be a feast day. Maybe you'll get honey, or a new stick for chasing geese, or maybe nothing will happen at all. That's okay, because sometimes, even in a life full of hardship and hunger and harsh lessons, there are moments of stillness, of quiet joy, of soft straw and softer dreams, and tonight as the fire fades and your breathing evens out, the world outside may be cruel. But for now, you are safe. Sleep well, little one. End of script. Sweet dreams.